Sometimes your entire world can change in a single sentence. One moment you're on a road trip with your family, kids in the backseat, music playing, snacks ready. And then one word, one warning can turn an ordinary day into the moment you realize the people you trusted most, your own parents, might have been willing to throw your life away. That's exactly what happened to me. On our way to a simple family reunion, my husband suddenly went pale, his voice low, almost breaking as he whispered, "Turn the car around. Right now." First I laughed, thinking he was joking. But he wasn't. That warning saved our lives. And when I finally understood why, I never looked at my parents the same way again. The plan was supposed to be simple. We'd leave early, just after breakfast, hit the road while the sun was still low, and cruise for a few hours. The drive wasn't long, just enough to cross into Canada, see family, smile for some pictures, and make small talk over food. It was supposed to be one of those trips where nothing surprising happens, where the biggest challenge is keeping the kids from spilling juice in the back seat. I had already braced myself for the awkward conversations, the gossip, and of course, the dreaded potato salad my Aunt Linda always insisted on making. Nothing exciting, nothing dramatic, just boring. And boring was what I wanted. I was driving like I usually do. My husband, let's call him Mark, doesn't drive badly, but he has this habit that makes me crazy. He brakes at the very last possible second, like he's testing the limits of the car and my sanity at the same time. And since I get carsick easily, me driving was the safer choice for everyone. So there I was, hands on the wheel, coffee in the cup holder, focused on the road. In the back seat, our kids, ages 5, 7, and 10, were their usual half-asleep, half-hyper selves. They wore those colorful neck pillows I'd bought online, which made them look like little exhausted astronauts. A tablet was propped up between them, playing some cartoon they'd already watched 100 times. But even with that, they still managed to argue over invisible seat boundaries, each one swearing the other had crossed the line. To any parent it would sound familiar, chaos, but the manageable kind. Not magical, not miserable, just fine. And then Mark spoke. He didn't shout. He didn't sound panicked. His voice was quiet, clipped, but urgent. He just said, "Turn around. Now." First I smirked. I thought maybe he was joking. Maybe he'd forgotten something silly like sunglasses or his wallet. But he didn't laugh. He didn't explain. He just sat there staring straight ahead, his face pale. "Why?" I asked, trying to keep it light. He didn't answer immediately. His jaw tightened and finally he whispered, "Please, just turn the car around." That's when it hit me. Mark doesn't panic. His default settings are calm, steady, sometimes tired but never shaken. I'd seen him handle a kitchen fire once without breaking a sweat. And now he was asking me, begging me to turn the car around. That was all I needed. I took the next exit. The road curved off the highway like it was giving me a second chance. The moment we left the main road, I could feel the change in him. His shoulders dropped slightly. Not fully relaxed, but no longer bracing like he had been. Something about leaving that highway eased him just a little. I gripped the wheel. "Okay," I said. "Do you want to tell me what's going on?" Mark shook his head. "Just drive. Anywhere but there." The kids noticed. My middle child, 7 years old, leaned forward. "Mom, are we going the wrong way?" I forced a smile. "We just forgot something." "What?" he asked. "I'll tell you later," I muttered. My youngest piped up. "Is it the snacks?" I didn't answer. My throat felt tight. The car went quiet again. For 20 minutes, maybe longer, we drove in silence. Trees blurred past the window. My pulse thumped in my neck, heavy and strange, like it knew something I didn't. Then Mark said, "Take the next turn off." The road he pointed to barely looked like a road at all. It was narrow, empty, no signs. The kind of place you'd only end up on if you were lost or about to be. But I turned anyway. Gravel crunched under the tires as I slowed the car to a stop. Mark unbuckled his seatbelt. "Stay here," he said quietly. He got out and walked to the back of the car. I watched him in the mirrors, my stomach twisting. My hands were slick on the wheel. Every nerve in my body was on edge, but I stayed still, waiting. The trunk opened. I couldn't see what he was doing. A minute passed. Then another. My heart raced. And then thunk. The trunk closed. He came back to my window. His face was pale, but his eyes were steady. "Can you step out for a second?" "Why?" I whispered. "I need you to see it." He didn't sound scared. He didn't sound angry. Just tired. And very, very sure. So I opened the door, stepped out, and followed him. The gravel crunched under my shoes. He walked me to the back of the car, lifted the trunk again, and pointed. He didn't say a word. Just motioned for me to look. And when I did, the air left my lungs. I didn't feel fear right away. That would come later. What I felt in that moment was heavier, slower, like the floor of my life had dropped out from under me. There it was. The red duffel bag. The one my dad had casually handed us that morning, saying their car was too full. Just an extra bag, he'd said. No big deal. But inside, under a sweatshirt, stuffed into what looked like a kid's toiletry bag, were packets. Wrapped in plastic. Several of them. Not vitamins. Not medicine. Nothing that wouldn't land us in handcuffs at the border. I froze. My chest locked up. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. The truth was obvious. Mark zipped the bag shut again. He didn't need to say anything. The silence said it all. They put that in our car, I whispered. He nodded once. With the kids, I added, my voice breaking. Another nod. The sky was still blue above us. The world looked the same, but nothing felt the same anymore. I thought I was the responsible one. Not responsible like paying bills on time or putting on sunscreen, though yes, I did those things too. I mean responsible in a deeper way. The stable one. The calm one. The one who didn't explode, didn't lie for fun, didn't disappear when things got hard. I really believed that was who I was in the family, the one who tried. But looking back now, I see the truth. Being the responsible one in my family was like being the designated driver at a demolition derby. Nobody wanted me to fix things. They just wanted cover. A shield. Someone to keep the chaos from spilling too far into the open. And for years I gave it to them. Started when I was a kid. My parents, let's call them Carol and Dennis, were obsessed with appearances. To them, life wasn't about stability or savings or even happiness. It was about image. If the Christmas lights were perfect, if the fridge was stocked with 5 different types of mustard, if the lawn looked like a magazine cover, then in their minds we were doing fine. It didn't matter that sometimes the power was shut off, or that dinner was just cereal because the grocery budget was gone. That was all hidden behind the illusion. The rule was simple. Stick to the script, or get rewritten. The money came and went like weather. There were years when they were broke, where I could feel the tension in the house, the late nights that really meant unpaid bills. And then suddenly there'd be a flush of cash, new car, new TV, new patio set that no one actually used. They never adjusted their spending. They just kept acting like the good times would last forever. Once when I was about 8, I asked my dad why we didn't save more money when things were going well. He looked at me with this grin and said, "You don't need to save if you know how to hustle." I was 8. What did I know? But that answer stuck with me, even if I didn't understand why it made my stomach twist. My sister Lisa inherited all of it. The shine, the charm, the way she could walk into a room and pull all the air toward her like gravity. She had the hustle, the sparkle, and she was their favorite. That wasn't even a secret. They called me boring, sometimes to my face. Too serious, too uptight. At one Thanksgiving, my mom laughed at me in front of everyone and said, "Your problem is you confuse discipline with personality." The wild part is I believed her. Because when you grow up in that kind of house, you learn fast that love has strings. You learn that to earn a place, you have to stay useful. So that's what I did. I became the dependable one, the helper, the fixer. That role followed me into adulthood. They'd call me whenever something complicated came up. Insurance paperwork? Call me. College forms? Call me. When Lisa lost yet another job, guess who helped bridge the gap? Me. And even when it hurt, even when they twisted every no into an act of selfishness, I still gave. I gave just enough to keep things from completely falling apart. Just enough to not be the villain. That was my place in the family. Not loved. Not equal. Just useful. Then things shifted just months before the trip. Lisa's son, my nephew, was struggling in school. They said he was being bullied, anxious, withdrawn. They'd taken him to see someone, and apparently a therapist recommended a smaller, more supportive school. They found a private school. Exclusive. Expensive. And in their words, life-changing. Of course they couldn't afford it. But they'd managed to get him conditionally accepted if they put down a deposit. They just needed help. Just a little bit. Just enough to lock it in. And of course they promised they'd pay me back. The moment they asked, my stomach sank. Not because I didn't care. I love my nephew. I wanted him to be okay. That was the worst part, I did care. But I knew this pattern. I'd seen how it started, and I knew exactly how it would end. So I said no. I said it gently, like you'd say it to someone holding a glass knife. I can't pay for private school. I have 3 kids of my own. We don't do private school. I'm sorry. They didn't argue. They didn't yell. They just went cold. My mom's voice was flat when she said, "Of course. I forgot. You have rules." That was it. Weeks passed with no calls, no texts. Just silence. Until the reunion came up. Suddenly they were cheerful again. Almost too cheerful. Excited to see us. Thrilled about the reunion. Everything was fine, they said. Everything had worked out. I didn't ask how. I told myself it wasn't my business. I didn't want to know. A few days before the trip, they asked if we could take an extra bag. Their car was full, but we had the SUV. Just one red duffel. Sure, I said, without a second thought. The morning we left, my dad handed it to me. The red bag, casual as anything. Won't fit in ours, he said. I tossed it in the trunk without even opening it. Didn't wonder why they suddenly seemed so relaxed. Didn't stop to think about how the same people who had just been drowning in money problems, begging me for help, were suddenly carefree. They smiled and waved as we pulled out of the driveway. And for a split second I thought, they seem happy. Just another bag. Just another trip. Just another family mess I didn't want to think too hard about. But Mark saw it. He saw something in their eyes when they handed over that bag. A look, a smile, like the plan was already done. Like they were sure it would work. That's why he asked me to turn the car around. That's why he told me to pull over and look. And when I finally saw what was inside, everything I thought I knew about my parents snapped. We didn't go to the reunion. Once I saw what was in that bag, there was no way. My body was still trembling as I slid back into the driver's seat, the steering wheel slick under my hands. Mark closed the trunk, came around, and buckled in. Neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. The kids, thank God, were still glued to their cartoon, unaware that our lives had almost been shattered at the border. They didn't know that their grandparents had stuffed something illegal into the back of our car. They didn't know that Mark had saved us by trusting his gut. So we drove. Directionless at first, highway, back roads, anywhere but toward Canada. My phone started buzzing after a while. First once. Then again. Then again. Mom. Dad. Mom again. I didn't answer. Mark didn't either. The screen lit up over and over like a little alarm, reminding me that they knew, that they were waiting, that they wanted answers. Eventually, we turned back toward their house. It wasn't planned, wasn't discussed. Just happened like we were on rails. I pulled into their driveway in the middle of the afternoon. The porch light was still on, though the sun was high, a weird detail that stuck with me. Mark got out first, opened the trunk, and pulled out the red duffel. I followed. My stomach was twisted into knots. My throat was dry. But I knew what had to be done. The spare key was still in its old hiding place, taped behind a fake rock in the flower bed. A ridiculous little plastic thing my dad had ordered from one of those catalogs that sells deer whistles and motion-activated garden frogs. I peeled the tape, pulled the key free, and unlocked the door. We stepped inside. The air smelled like stale coffee and carpet cleaner. We didn't open the bag. We didn't say a word. We just placed it inside the hallway. Quiet. Heavy. Like a bomb that didn't need to go off to destroy everything. Mark locked the door behind us, put the key back, and we left. That night the phone rang again. I waited until the kids were asleep before answering. It was my mom. Her voice was bright, sugary, fake. Like she was calling about muffins instead of trying to explain why she just risked her daughter's life. "Oh honey, we were so worried. You just disappeared. Is everything okay?" I didn't say a word. She pressed again. "Where's the bag?" I let the silence hang for a moment. Then finally I said, "We dropped it off at your house." There was a pause. Catch in her voice. She knew what I meant. And she knew I knew. "If it was that important," I added, "maybe you should have taken it yourself." The mask slipped for a split second. I heard it in the way her breath caught, the way the cheer cracked. I cut her off. "We're not doing this. Don't call again." And I hung up. No screaming. No dramatic finale. Just a door shutting firm and final. I wanted it to be the end. But it wasn't. Not even close. A few days later, the doorbell rang. No text. No warning. Just the sharp ding of people who thought they still had the right to show up. I didn't need to look through the peephole. I knew it was them. There's a kind of pressure that comes through a front door like static in the air, when the people on the other side think they've done nothing wrong. I stepped outside and shut the door firmly behind me. There they were. My parents. Standing on my porch like they hadn't just nearly destroyed my family. My mom gave me that tight, practiced smile, the one that was supposed to look warm but never touched her eyes. "We wanted to check in," she said sweetly, like this was some kind of brunch invite I'd forgotten. My dad chimed in. "We thought maybe we could clear the air." I said nothing. I just folded my arms and waited. My mom's smile wavered. "We didn't know how much you understood." There it was. The tell. The confession hidden in a half-truth. They knew. I knew. They just weren't sure how much of the ugly truth I'd let myself believe. "You mean the bag?" I asked flatly. Neither of them answered, which was answer enough. "You put that in our trunk," I said slowly, "with your grandchildren sitting in the back seat." My mom swallowed hard. My dad shifted his weight. "We didn't think it would be a big deal," my mom finally muttered. "It was just something to help with the debt," my dad added, his voice low, defensive. "We were desperate," my mom said quickly. "You wouldn't help." There it was again. Their favorite excuse. You wouldn't help. Like my boundaries had caused their betrayal. Like nearly destroying our lives was just a natural consequence of me not opening my wallet. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. My voice was steady when I said, "You didn't just betray me. You risked our lives. You risked your daughter, your son-in-law, your grandchildren." Silence. No apology. No recognition. Just the weight of their guilt hanging in the air. "We're done," I said. "Don't call. Don't come here. You don't get to see the kids. This is over." My mom opened her mouth. I could see it forming the classic line. "You're being dramatic. You'll cool off." But instead she just said softly, "You'll come around. You always do." I turned, walked back inside, and locked the door behind me. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't wonder if she was right. But 3 days later, everything shattered again. I showed up at school like always, ready to pick up the kids. But when I got there, the teacher looked at me calmly and said, "Oh, they've already been picked up. Your parents said you asked them to." The blood drained from my body. My stomach dropped so fast I couldn't even speak. I just stared at her like she'd told me my house was on fire. They had taken my kids. I don't remember the drive. All I know is 1 second I was standing in the school hallway, frozen solid, and the next I was behind the wheel, flooring it toward my parents' house. My hands shook on the steering wheel. My heart was in my throat. Every scenario ran through my head at once. What if they'd already left? What if they were on their way to the border again, this time with my kids in the back seat? What if I was too late? By the time I turned into their driveway, my chest felt like it might split open. And there they were. My car screeched to a stop. I barely put it in park before I bolted toward the house. Through the big front window I saw them, my kids, sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by bags of toys and candy, bright plastic wrappers, shiny boxes, the kind of spoils grandparents give when they're buying love instead of earning trust. And there, standing over them, were my parents, smiling, laughing, acting like nothing was wrong, like they hadn't just kidnapped my children. I threw the door open. The sound of it hitting the wall made everyone jump. My kids looked up, their faces lit with sugar and surprise. "Mom!" they shouted like this was all some fun surprise visit. But I didn't smile. I couldn't. My body was trembling, my voice sharp as glass. "Get your things. We're leaving. Now." The room went quiet. My parents exchanged a glance. Then my mom spoke in that infuriatingly calm voice she always used when she thought she was in control. "Oh, relax. They're fine. We just thought they deserved a little treat." I stared at her. "You picked them up from school. Without asking. Without telling me. Do you have any idea?" My voice cracked, my throat burning. "Do you have any idea what that felt like? Thinking they were gone? Thinking you'd taken them?" My dad scoffed. "You're overreacting. They're our grandkids. We're allowed to see them." "Allowed?" I shot back. My hands were shaking as I reached for the kids' backpacks. "You lost that privilege when you tried to use us as mules." When you risked our lives, you don't get to decide when you see them ever again. The kids were confused. They didn't understand the weight of what was happening. To them, it just looked like Mom was angry for no reason while Grandma and Grandpa were handing out toys. "Why are you mad?" my youngest whispered, clutching a stuffed animal still fresh from its packaging. I bent down, my voice low but firm. "Because they didn't ask. And because you're mine, not theirs." It broke my heart to see their little faces crumple with confusion. But I couldn't waver. I had to show them that safety meant boundaries. That family didn't mean unconditional access. My mom's voice cut through the silence. "You're going to regret this. One day, those kids will hate you for keeping them from us." That was it. The final nail. The proof that none of this had ever been about love. It was about control. About possession. About what they thought they were owed. I stood up, my voice steady. "No. One day they'll thank me." And with that I walked out, kids in tow. That night I told Mark it was over. Not just over like, "We won't talk for a while." Not over like, "Maybe at Christmas we'll patch things up." No, this was permanent. A cut clean and deep. We sat at the kitchen table while the kids slept upstairs, the house finally quiet. Mark's hand covered mine. He didn't need to say it, but he did anyway. "You did the right thing." I nodded, and for the first time in my life I believed it. 2 months later we moved. Packed everything we could into a truck and drove across the country. New house. New schools. New start. First it felt like running away. Like I'd abandoned the battlefield instead of winning the fight. But then the silence settled in. The kind of silence that doesn't come from a slammed phone or a locked door. The kind that means peace. And I realized it wasn't running. It was freedom. The final twist came almost a year later. One ordinary morning, Mark slid a folded newspaper across the table. "You should see this," he said. There they were. My parents' names. Buried in a little crime blotter section. Arrested. Trafficking charges. Court dates pending. I stared at the print until the words blurred. It wasn't shock. Not really. Deep down I think I'd been waiting for it. Like gravity pulling everything to its inevitable end. I set the paper down, took a sip of my coffee, and for the first time in years I felt nothing. And that's when it hit me. For so long I thought family meant obligation. That being responsible meant protecting them, no matter what. But family isn't supposed to be a trap. It's not supposed to be leverage or blackmail, or a game of debts and favors. Family is supposed to be safe. And when it isn't, when the people who raised you choose lies and betrayal over love, then walking away isn't cruel. It's survival. I didn't lose a family. I protected one. My own.